Welcome to Crossroads. We have some big stories today. First of all, the Obama-era control over the internet has made its return. This is actually a lot more significant than what I think almost any news outlet is saying right now. I'm going to show you what is actually in this and what it actually means, because they're saying, hey, it's about diversity and it's about respecting race and making big companies pay their dues. It's actually a lot more than this, and you won't find it, I think, on most news websites. I'll explain all of this. Also, Joe Biden has lost a major gun rights case. This is pretty significant. And establishment media are trying to defend themselves because it turns out they had journalists embedded with the terrorists when they went and murdered civilians in Israel. Wild stuff, folks. We'll get into all this. First of all, though, we have a special feature airing tonight at 7 p.m. You might remember I was gone for about a week. I was actually in South Korea, and I was investigating the Chinese Communist Party's systems for culture war. What is happening there is happening here, and what's happening there impacts all of us. That'll be 7 p.m. tonight, where I delve real deep into this investigative feature, so don't miss it. Now, before we get into today's stories, again, the announcement, my special feature is going to be called the Chinese Communist Party's United Front on American Performing Arts. It's going to be out tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Epoch TV. Let me show you the trailer. The Chinese Communist Party is exposing its hand. The fingerprints can be found all over. And I recently caught wind of these CCP operations on full display in South Korea. The top 13 theaters all rejected Shen Yun almost simultaneously. What makes the case in South Korea so different? And how does the CCP extend its influence into other countries? Now, for the Chinese Communist Party, this is warfare. War being waged here isn't being done through tanks and bombs, but instead through the invisible forces of culture and ideology. They also revealed a hidden war. All right, now this is a very important issue. My team and I traveled again to South Korea to expose the CCP's unrestricted warfare and its united front tactics that are being used to subvert a democratic nation, and notably an ally of the United States. What they're doing there is targeted at the U.S. You can again watch that 7 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. The link will be ept.ms/CCPS, as in CCP's culture warfare. And you can also find the link to that in the description below this video. Now let's get back to today's stories. First of all, you might have heard about net neutrality. It's the Obama-era control over the internet, which they had in place. It has now made its return. It was brought back in October, and they just passed something that goes beyond what was there before. Let me explain. Basically, the Federal Communications Commission is bringing back a policy of deep government regulation over the internet with so-called net neutrality. Now, if you're a supporter of the system, you might, or you know someone who's a supporter, you might have heard it being defended on claims that it prevents internet providers from providing better services to some and worse services to others. Many who don't support net neutrality say so on the grounds that it stifles innovation. But there are actually deeper problems with net neutrality that are often left just completely unaddressed. Things like so-called, quote, digital equity, and policies, notably, that would allow the federal government to have a say over the terms of services for websites, and basically, what was just passed, control almost the entire internet. Now, the FCC passed this yesterday in a 2-3 vote along party lines. Let me show you, before we delve into this, how the other media are framing it. So this, if you were just to look at what other media are saying, this is what you would think had just happened. Here's Next TV. FCC enacts anti-digital discrimination rules. Wall Street Journal. Digital discrimination in the crosshairs of new FCC rule. Here's Ars Technica. Cable lobby and Ted Cruz are disappointed as FCC bans digital discrimination. And it says the FCC will investigate ISP, internet service providers, that discriminate by income level or race. Now, who doesn't support fighting against big businesses discriminating against users? Who wouldn't be for that? You know, there's a push to fight against digital discrimination. It's something that lets the FCC investigate internet service providers that are discriminating against people. Now, it sounds like it's mostly just about this. It's just about the FCC going after the internet service providers for abuse in, corporate policies that are discriminatory. I mean, who wouldn't support that? But if it's not really what's in this, and let me show you first what the other side is saying, and notably it actually goes even beyond this. This is what Representative Ted Cruz and 27 other Senate Republicans were saying. Remember, it made it sound like they were against discrimination. This is what they actually said. This is a letter they wrote to FCC Chairwoman Rosen Workel. Now, Ted Cruz wrote, while the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that's the IIJA, instructed the FCC to prevent digital discrimination of broadband access based on income level, race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin, the draft rules are untenably broad and inconsistent with the plain meaning of the statute. It continues by stating, apparently displeased by the result, the Biden administration instructed the FCC to broaden its inquiry under Section 60506. And it says that if adopted, nearly every aspect of the broadband business, including a broadband provider's deployment decisions, network reliability, network maintenance, the equipment it distributes to customers, pricing, promotional discounts, customer service, language options, credit checks, marketing, advertising, and more, will be subject to potential FCC enforcement action, including multi-million-dollar forfeitures and injunctive orders under a disparate impact standard. It says, as the lawmakers pointed out, such a standard of liability is unlawful. Now, on this, really, if you read that, you'd understand it's not just about fighting so-called digital discrimination. It's a policy that brings not only every part of an ISP under state control, but by extension to that, almost the entire internet under the federal government. And there's actually more to it. Now, first, let's explain what they describe as digital discrimination, because this is how they're explaining it. It's about going after discrimination based on religion, national origin, and so on and so on and so on. What do they mean? How do they define discrimination? Well, let's go to the actual FCC fact sheet, and here's what it says. It says, digital discrimination of access defined. Quote, in furtherance of our goal to facilitate equal access to broadband internet access service, we adopt the following definition of digital discrimination of access. Quote, policies or practices not justified by genuine issues or technical economic feasibility that, one, differentially impact customers' access to broadband internet access services based on their income level, race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin, or two, are intended to have such a differential impact. Under the rules we adopt today, we will investigate conduct alleged to be motivated by discriminatory intent, as well as conduct alleged to have discriminatory effect based on income level, race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin. Now, when they say alleged, in addition to are, that's a big important definition there. Because if they're doing it with the intent, well, that's actual discrimination. But if they're doing it with the alleged intent, well, who's making the allegation? Anybody can. Anybody can say, I'm being discriminated against. Anybody can make that accusation. And so within the language of this, they're giving themselves, while making it sound like they're going after actual discrimination, they're saying that based on anyone's call, if anyone, no matter, maybe even someone within the companies, says that, hey, you should investigate it, they can do it. It is a carte blanche approach where they can do this without needing almost any reason. And it says, consistent with the definition of equal access in the statute, we find that differentiation as to any available quality of service metric for broadband service may provide a basis for liability under these rules, absent sufficient justification. In other words, if there's any difference in how these companies provide their services, they could face liability. They could go after them for it. Now, I should note, when they talk about difference in services provided to people based on race, income level, religion, national origin, I will say this: every single person on the face of the earth is part of a religion, whether it's, even atheism might include in there. Every single person on the face of the earth is part of a race. Yes, if you're white, you still have a race. Yes, if you're white, you still have a national origin. Every single person would be encompassed within these definitions, because every single person living right now, and even people who are dead, everyone has a race and a national origin and an income level and their own beliefs. So what does this mean? It means that by making it appear it's about discrimination, they're encompassing everything, meaning they can launch this anytime they want based on any difference in services. And remember, this could extend to other areas as well. This is not just about actual discrimination. And I would say, actually, in terms of them even launching this, it's not about discrimination, because there's no serious evidence of violations of this. They're doing it based on the prospect that it could potentially happen, not based on the idea that it is in fact happening. Meaning they're doing something else with it. I do not believe in any way this is the real motivation for it. Read deeper into it and you'll find this. It could extend to other areas, including free speech. This is back to the FCC fact sheet we just discussed. Quote, online platforms are also associated with the increase in misinformation and disinformation, disproportionately impacting vulnerable populations who cannot decipher through the accelerated sophistication of emerging technologies. The inability to decipher misinformation, which can lead to confusion, can create a chilling effect, preventing marginalized communities from accessing resources, applying to jobs, and developing digital literacy. Now, that sounds kind of racist to me, personally. Like, even news and online information, they're saying, can be regarded as going against the standards of equity since, quote, vulnerable populations are apparently unable to judge for themselves between what's true and false. That's what they're saying. They're suggesting that information itself can be racist, that information itself can violate these standards on equity. And so what's the solution to that? Well, manage it all under the federal government, maybe create equity within the information sphere, using control of the ISPs, internet service providers, as a way to go after them, which, by the way, would control your basic access to the internet. And it goes deeper than this. FCC Commissioner Brandon Carr last Monday came out to challenge this. And this is what he said. He said President Biden has called on the FCC to adopt new rules of breathtaking scope. Those rules would give the federal government a roving mandate to micromanage nearly every aspect of how the internet functions, from how the ISPs, internet service providers, allocate capital and where they build, to the services that consumers can purchase, from the profits that ISPs can realize and how they market and advertise services, to the discounts and promotions that customers can receive. And he goes deeper into these problems in an open letter. Let me show you this. He said that President Biden's plans hand the administrative state effective control over all internet services and infrastructure in the country. He said never before in the roughly 40 years of the public internet has the FCC, or any federal agency for that matter, claimed this degree of control over it, the internet. He said, indeed, President Biden's plan calls for the OC for the CC to apply a far-reaching set of government controls that the FCC, that the agency has not applied to any technology in a modern era. And he continues stating the Biden administration's plan empowers the FCC to regulate every aspect of the internet sector for the first time ever. Now remember, when he mentions the administrative state, he's invoking something important here. Because when it comes to the administrative state, what you have is administrative creep. You have the creeping up of new laws and regulations. This is a way of creating laws that bypass the legislative process. And even this, in a way, bypassed the legislative process, by the way. Even this new digital equity standard bypassed Congress. That was one of the big problems that Ted Cruz raised, because they did in Congress pass this certain statute that really goes against, discrimination based on access to broadband. This latest update on digital equity bypassed Congress, and that's the problem they were raising with it, meaning the administrative state is already involved with this. The problem of the administrative state is this: it means any federal agency can create rules. Those rules and that process of doing that goes against the basic way that our country was established. Under normal circumstances, if you want to pass a law, the way the founding fathers really intended it, was that Congress, elected officials, elected by you and I, go and debate it, and they cast their votes. If Congress agrees on it, then that legislation moves up to the president, and the president of the United States has to decide whether to sign it or not. And this bypasses that whole system and allows these agencies to do anything almost. We've already now watched this expand. It took a very short amount of time. It was only in October that they first cleared the way for the return of net neutrality. Already they're doing this. And it seems as well to be part of a broader agenda. Biden already established laws on so-called digital equity elsewhere. Remember, this ties to his executive order, for example, on artificial intelligence. This was what Biden wrote just recently. This is already passed. This was an executive order. This is currently in effect. Biden wrote, irresponsible use could exacerbate societal harms. This is talking about AI. Irresponsible use could exacerbate societal harms such as fraud, discrimination, bias, and disinformation, displace and disempower workers, stifle competition, and pose risks to national security. So what's the solution to that? Biden said, my administration will help develop effective labeling and content provenance mechanisms so that Americans are able to determine when content is generated using AI and when it is not. Meaning, all content soon is going to be labeled, and it's going to have some kind of system to make sure that a human created it, or if an AI created it, to say otherwise. What does that mean? It means all content, every single thing, every image, every script, every news article, every video, every single thing you see online or otherwise right now is going to have a label on it. Made by AI or made by humans. And how do you do that? You need to create a system to monitor it. You need to create a system to ensure that a human created, X content. This is exactly what I was saying was going to happen. How do you ensure that something was made by a human and not by an AI? Well, it very likely means you need to start registering yourself, and every single thing you create is going to be documented and monitored to an extent, because that's the only way you can do it. It says further in that artificial intelligence policies must be consistent with my administration's dedication to advancing equity and civil rights. Meaning, everything made by AI is going to have to be in line with these new standards on equity and civil rights. And what is equity, by the way? It's socialism. It's the absolute standards of equal outcome. Not equal opportunity, but equality of outcome, meaning everything you create is going to be on the same plane, no matter what it is. And it's going to have to abide by all these different standards of everything they have now defined as discriminatory. And yes, that includes even what they claim to be disinformation, because they claim that marginalized groups are incapable of deciphering whether information is true or not. This means effective state control over every single thing that is created. Biden continues stating in his executive order, "My administration cannot and will not tolerate the use of AI to disadvantage those who are already too often denied equal opportunity and justice. From hiring to housing to healthcare." You get that? From hiring to housing to healthcare. What does that have to do with AI? He says, "We have seen what happens when AI use deepens discrimination and bias rather than improving quality of life. Artificial intelligence systems developed irresponsibly have reproduced and intensified existing inequities, causing new types of harmful discrimination and exacerbated online and physical harms." Now, what does that mean? It means everything. Everything electronic, digital, which, by the way, smart cities are now governed electronically. Everything that is written is governed electronically. Your kids attending school with remote schooling, you attending your job through remote work, everything now has a digital element to it. Our social interactions, the new town squares of social media, the entire world now going digital means that every single thing is now under state control. And this also ties to the Biden administration's whole of government executive order on racial equity, because this again ties to the standards where he says that AI has to abide. Remember, AI has to abide by racial equity, and internet service providers now have to abide by racial equity based on these two orders. What is racial equity? Well, we can turn to Biden's other executive order on racial equity, and this is what it says. It says it, quote, "addresses emerging civil rights risks. The executive order instructs agencies to focus their civil rights authorities and offices on emerging threats such as algorithmic discrimination in automated technology, improve accessibility for people with disabilities, improve language access services, and consider opportunities to bolster the capacity of their civil rights offices. It further directs agencies to ensure that their own use of artificial intelligence and automated systems also advances equity." In other words, every single federal agency, I'm just reading the part on AI here, but essentially what this does is it means every single federal agency needs to enact policies of equity, equality of outcome, socialism. And it means that your internet service providers, it means that artificial intelligence and everything those connect to, which is, yes, the entire internet and everything digitally created and everything digitally managed, which means almost all of civilization these days, is now under these policies and is now under state control and has to abide and advance these policies of equity. Now, that also means they need to monitor AI use for discrimination and disinformation. And really what this means is broad government control over information and over what is created as well. Now, tell me, folks, what areas of society will AI impact? Let's look on the long term. When we hear about what is going to be governed very soon by AI, what does that actually encompass? Well, they're saying everything, right? They're saying it's going to be the future of entertainment. They say it's going to be the future of news. They say it's going to be the future of music. It's going to be the future of any kind of creative art. It's going to be the future of what manages our societies as they move to smart cities. It's going to be the future of how law enforcement monitors people, tracks people, maintains databases of digital IDs. It means that all of society, including you, are going to be managed through AI systems. And what does it mean when you have broad state control over all of that? It means a system of social control unlike anything history has ever witnessed. Now, how broad will AI be in our society? It'll encompass everything. And to this new rule on digital equity fitting into this, it means that everything, even from the ISP level, is going to be controlled by this. So you tell me, How broad is this new level of federal government control? What does this actually represent? I'd say it's a deeply, deeply concerning picture. Now, again, the other side of it, I should note, is that you could argue that with the World Economic Forum and the takeover of, I'd say, governments through the corporate investment, business, and nonprofit sector, which is what, World Economic Forum really represents. You could argue there's already a push, essentially a coup d'etat, to allow banks, businesses, nonprofits, NGOs, and so on, relative government influence. They want to have influence over policies and influence over the way governments work. That ties to World Economic Forum and Agenda 2030 of the United Nations. Now, the problem with that is, as we've seen with the censorship systems, that government can use private businesses to bypass constitutional protections. In a certain way, that's actually worse. And in a certain way, you could argue a lot of these big companies that were controlling ISPs and so on, a lot of them are already on board with these types of policies. And in terms of investment and so on, they also have people pushing those agendas. From that perspective, you could also argue on the other side that bringing all this under direct government control means you can sue the government if they violate your constitutional rights, whereas you wouldn't have the same path of, let's say, legal recourse were it just strictly under businesses. At the very least, you wouldn't have as many rights. And so even though this is really, I'd say, a massive government takeover of society, it does open the door for a lot of lawsuits. And those lawsuits actually could clarify the limits on these types of practices. And so we'll see where it goes. Now, with that said, let's jump over to Epoch TV, where I'm going to be talking about some other interesting topics. Joe Biden losing a major gun rights case, establishment media defending themselves because they had journalists embedded with the terrorists in Israel. And before we jump, just a reminder again, my special feature on the CCB's Unrestricted Warfare Systems that is airing tonight. We're going to premiere it tonight on Epoch TV at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The link to it is ept.ms ccp's Culture Warfare. And you can also find the link in the description below. I will see you all tonight for that.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.